to be a really good COO, you have to be good at operations. You have to be good at basic company systems, right? That's the exact thing you don't want to do as a CEO. What I would suggest for anyone who wants to have the seat is to say, can you give up the control of being the one who decides how things are done and just start saying, here's what I want to happen, and have someone that they trust who is capable to execute on that. In the most basic form, I would say a COO should learn how to see farther, and a COO should learn how to see a little closer.
Guest today is the Chief Operating Officer of Easy Health, Aaron Schiff. Easy Health is a company redesigning Medicare by connecting insurance distribution and care. The company has a simple purpose: to help enroll and follow up with people eligible for Medicare to improve health outcomes. They currently have raised $135 million in equity and debt, co-led from Anthemis Group and QED investors, and included Victory Park Capital, Nationwide Ventures, Healthy Ventures, Brewer Lane, and Operator Partners. Prior to this, Aaron founded Matic and served as the Chief Executive Officer from 2014 to 2018. Matic is a tech-enabled insurance agency which simplifies purchasing homeowners insurance, allowing lenders to close loans faster and reduce origination costs. During his time, he was recognized as the Housing Wire Rising Stars and currently resides as a board member. Aaron is a Southern California native growing up in Los Angeles, graduating from the University of Santa Barbara. He lives in Venice, California with his 3-year-old German Shepherd, Maxwell, who he adopted from the local shelter and is the true head of household. So Aaron, welcome to the Second in Command podcast. Hey, you're welcome. Good to see you. I'm actually really looking forward to diving in on this. So I'm going to ask you in a second about Easy Health, but I just want to get a little bit of kind of your background and what got you to where you are today. So, give us kind of the 1 or 2 minute helicopter tour of who Aaron Schiff is and how you got here.
I never considered myself an entrepreneur, even though I think inherently I was one. My first company out of college, I was trying to do every role possible. My last name Schiff, I would do what's called the Schiff loop, where I would go, when I went to the bathrooms were in the middle and it was a circular office. And so you could go all the way in the circle and talk to every single person. So I would go to on the way to the bathroom, I would literally talk to every single person and say, what did you do? To show me what show me your day to day. And it's funny, everyone wants to talk about what they do. And so I learned a lot about the organization, and I was trying to help everyone, and we could do this, we could do that. And I was just put in my box. And so I ended up switching to a certain department, took a pay cut to do it because I wanted to learn more. And I said, hey, if I do well, you guys have to give me a raise. And they said, okay, deal. And so within a couple of months, I started making $4,000 in net new profit, for them a day. And this was right in 2008, 2009 crash. So they were like, oh, we're doing a hiring freeze. And I was like, I make what you guys promised me to raise in a day. Like, it's not, it's not a lot of money.
Easy.
It's easy. Exactly. And they didn't do it. And so from there, I was like, okay, I can do this on my own. And that was really the genesis of my entrepreneurial journey. And then from there, a couple failed projects. And then, my first real company was an ad network. We made $6,000 in our first 3 days. We made our first $1 million in 7 months. It was just me and a partner, and we started doing a lot of revenue and a lot of profit. And it was a life-changing business for us. And I told myself I'd never be in debt ever again. Fast forward a couple of years later, I bought my first house, and that led me into my next project, Matic, where my partner and I got together and we said, hey, why can't you buy home insurance at the point of sale? And because I almost lost my house, when I went to buy my house, I actually almost lost the deal because I didn't have home insurance. And so my partner on the other side was doing an audit on a lender, and he found that we were going to lose $30,000 a month because of home insurance, loan delays caused by home insurance. And so we said, or he actually said to me, hey, why don't we integrate with lenders at the point of sale? And I was like, well, I didn't even know you could integrate with a lender. Let's do it. So Matic is a really large fintech company in the space. It's funny, in 2014, there wasn't such a thing as fintech, which is when we started it. And now it's big. And then I sold part of it in 2019, took a year off, COVID hit. I was bored out of my mind. I was on Wall Street Bets, day trading before Wall Street Bets was a big thing. I was just bored. And then my now partner reached out to me and said, he saw me on a podcast or something related to Matic. And, there's only so many insurtech entrepreneurs in LA. And so he reached out to me and he was explaining what he did. And I was like, holy cow, I just built this business, but for PNC, and now you can do this in a completely different vertical, which is Medicare, 65 and over. We help seniors figure out the best healthcare plan for them and make sure they utilize their benefits, and with the goal of better health outcomes. And so he was explaining to me what he was doing. I was like, oh my gosh, I just built this business, but this has 3 times bigger, better unit economics and a 12x bigger market. So it's like, this is a no-brainer. And that's how we got started. And
with Matic, did you raise money there as well?
Yeah. So my first company was an ad network. We didn't raise a dime. Just to give you the difference in what's changed in 10 years, that was about 2011. We were doing $1 million in revenue within, like I said, 7 months, and we couldn't get a $3 million valuation on a note. Today, those numbers would be, we would have gotten a $50 million, $100 million valuation based off of the world that we live in today in the venture community. So that was actually really lucky we didn't raise money. So the first one we didn't. Matic, we did raise venture dollars. And actually with Easy Health, I went to a lot of my old Matic investors and was like, if you like Matic, you're going to like this. And then I think it's a good signal that a lot of the investors from Matic also invested in this.
So to start off, I mean, doing 2 companies in a row that were yours, what was it that then allowed you to shift gears and go into the COO role? Completely different role.
Yeah.
I know you're also a co-founder, so like to kind of bracket it, right? But
yeah, no, it's true. I mean, my partner Dave is the CEO. I try to honor that delta and not be, it's really easy for me to be like, I know what I'm doing. I'm the CEO, but I think a couple things. Number one, I was just really hungry to find something I wanted to work on, and so there's that. Number two, I'm just very fortunate to have a great partner. There's a lot that I can learn from him and have learned from him, and there's a lot he can learn from me. So I think it takes a special. I don't think I could do it with just any partner. I think the one I have today is just a special type of person, and so. We just work well together. So honestly, really lucky. And I would not have thought I could be a CEO. And one of my concerns was, I don't know if I don't know how to be a CEO. Like that's all I've ever known. And so, yeah, I think luck, just being more mature than I was, 5 years ago, and letting my ego on the side and saying, hey, I just want to win. And that's what David wants to do too. We're just here to win.
So explain to us the differences of what a CEO and a COO are then from your kind of lens, because you've done both. I mean, you can read about it, but what are the real differences from what you've seen playing in both roles? Not from a textbook, but from an actual practical, you were there.
Yeah. One of the nice things is, and I think why this has worked well for me, is that David has given me like a CEO in a box role in a lot of senses. So there are certain things where there's a lot of autonomy. And so I still get that. At the same time, I still have the responsibilities of, I'm a 0 to 1, David's a 1 to 10. So it's actually really nice for him to just be focusing on that. Let's get that 10X. So for me, what that means is you're focusing on the 10X, but we still have to execute on the tasks at hand. So it's really a lot more operations. It's a lot more granular. It's a lot more tying the vision into actual process and operations, which is really fun. But also, sometimes the narrative has to be brought down, or at least the expectations have to have a certain a realistic timeline. And as every good CEO knows, there's a little bit of emphasis on everything you say.
I'm curious. We in the COO Alliance, this network that I run, we've got COOs from 17 countries, and not very many of them, I'd say maybe 5%, have aspirations to ever be a CEO. They love being a second in command. They might want to do it for other companies, but they really have no desire to play in that seat. What do you think would allow for any of the COOs that maybe want to be a CEO? What do they have to do differently? Because you had to adapt to go from CEO to COO. What would they have to do to go from COO to CEO?
I think to be a really good COO, you have to be good at operations. You have to be good at basic company systems, right? You're the person who eventually is responsible for something as simple as, hey, making sure employees get their computer on time, to HR problems, to specifically where's our BI and how do I even understand the basic metrics. So it's really such a wide gamut, and so you have to be really in the weeds. that's the exact thing you don't want to do as a CEO. So what I would suggest for anyone who wants to have the seat is to say, okay, can you give up the control of being the one who decides how things are done and just start saying, here's what I want to happen, and have someone that they trust who is capable to execute on that. And that is a very, and be able to say over and over again, is this the end goal that I'm trying to hit? Versus, again, the COO, you have to be a little more, you have to see a little closer in front of you, versus a CEO, it just looks farther. So in the most basic form, I would say a COO should learn how to see farther, and a COO should learn how to see a little closer.
Yeah. Do you think I'm a little bit too close to it to see something? But I'm curious whether I've always seen the CEO, COO as the real yin and yang in the business, and the other C-levels as important, but a very different relationship to the CEO, COO one. Am I missing something, or do you think that's accurate?
It's certainly true in my experience, of one, to be fair, but or actually, I guess 3. But I think the reason for that, well, those are also co-founder roles, right? I think COOs are typically co-founders for the most part.
Yeah.
So just a co-founder is a different, you're in the investor meetings, you're doing all the same heavy lifting in terms of the partnership. So I think I would agree that it's relatively it's a different relationship for sure.
Yeah, than the CTO or CFO or other kind of C-level roles for sure. So I want you to just tell us again what Easy Health does in layman's terms, so everybody understands that. And then I want to get into some of the kind of specifics of how you got to where you are with the company today as well.
As you mentioned, we're the first company to combine insurance distribution and care. What does that mean? There are brokers, there are insurance distributors, and there are providers. So you go to the doctor or you get a checkup from a nurse practitioner, things like that. And these health plans, these carriers, work with both insurance brokerage, distribution, and providers, care. And so these services already exist to help a senior. But no company has ever combined both. And so by doing that, we fundamentally improve Medicare and remove the silos that exist today. Because the person you sign up with and you speak with for 30 minutes and you tell them your clinical conditions, you tell them your drug history and all that, and you spend, and they work with you to figure out the best plan for you. As soon as your plan starts, they're done. And so all that information that you gave the broker is now lost and gets lost in translation. They don't give you any expectation of what you should do with your plan. Typically, they don't even tell you how to use a lot of your benefits, or you don't know enough to do on your own, and so there's no help. And so by combining those two, the insurance brokerage, the distribution, and care, we create better health outcomes because we're helping the member throughout the journey. Easy Health persists the senior, aka the member, throughout their journey of Medicare versus just stopping when the policy starts.
And is Medicare your entire market, or do you go outside of the Medicare market then?
Just Medicare.
Just Medicare. Interesting.
Yeah, which is a $800 billion market and expecting to double to $1.6 trillion by 2028.
You're really not doing very much at all. You haven't been quite successful at all. 135 million. Holy shit balls. That's amazing. In a few years.
This has been a rocket ship. I will say, I've never been at a company like this with this type of growth. It's every day is a new challenge, and it's funny. I used to read about how when you're in a rocket ship, it's you have different types of problems, and I was like, wow, yeah, those are really good problems. It's like I have too much money, quote unquote, is a problem. Not that that's my problem. I wish it was, but yeah. It's one of those things that people frame as a problem, but you're like, that's not a problem. But it is when you grow really quickly, you have your own set of problems. The reality is the wings are falling off and you're duct taping them in the middle of the air, right? You have all these things because you're moving so fast and you're getting so many, so much scale so quickly. Hiring is challenging, servicing your customers are challenging, making sure things don't break is challenging, making sure you're compliant, making sure that your employees are happy. It's just really, really hard. And it just gets harder at scale, especially when to scale quickly, you fundamentally cannot build process quick enough. And so what that creates is chaos.
Now, is this a rebrand of an existing company, or did you really founded this 18 months ago and you raised 135 million in 18 months?
Yeah. So my partner bought an insurance agency. So we got our license faster, but brand new company, brand new ownership. It was like a 10-person agency.
How many employees? How many employees now?
300 plus.
300 plus in 18 months. So are you guys, what are you using that money for now? Is it to acquire talent? Like, are you going out and just buying the best senior team you can put together? Is it marketing? What are you spending on? Tech?
Yes. Certainly our number one priority is smart people. We are where we are today because we've recruited incredible people. I mean, if you want to have a great company, that's the easiest recipe for success, especially when you're a market size as big as ours. Having really smart people who've done it before, not just smart, but who've done it before, is really helpful. And I've never seen a company at our, at least before we raised all this money, that had the team that we had. So that's one. And then, marketing. Basically marketing just growing faster. I mean, I think the definition, why you should try to get venture dollars. The only reason is to pour gasoline on a fire. If you don't have product market fit, you're just creating a slog for yourself. Yeah. But if you have product market fit, then the venture dollars, what it should be used for is the gasoline to throw in the fire. And that's how we look at it. So it's just essentially a rocket fuel for growth.
How much of it have you spent?
We've been pretty capital efficient. We have about 80% of what we have in the bank still.
What were the key roles? What were the first kind of 3 key roles, do you think, or 15 key roles? Like, was there an area that you're like, well, that's the one we got to start?
Well, we're a tech company, so we are, again, brokerage and care, but our backbone is technology, and I think so. Having a chief, so I would just say it's not necessarily the role, especially early. It's the type of person you have who can play multiple roles. So we have a lot of people on our team who play multiple roles. Our chief product officer, Greg, used to be our CMO. So he could do to have someone who can be a legit CMO and also be a legit CPO is just a rare find. And the guy's brilliant. So we got lucky with that. Our VP of marketing today used to be our VP of operations. He can do both. He's brilliant, right? So we've just been really lucky to be able to get people who can do multiple roles and just, especially to start, especially when you're growing, you need to get things done for yourself. No one's going to help you. Certainly not our company, which makes it very challenging. You have to do it yourself. And so we've been really fortunate to find people who can execute without needing, tech resources or they know SQL themselves or things like that. So I would say it's more about the role and being a versatile player, especially earlier, and having smart people. That's really.
Then how are you attracting them? Is there equity? Is there long-term incentives as well? Is it just you're paying them great?
So great question. I think there's 3 things. The first thing is the story. We have a very clear mission of help, better health outcomes for seniors. There's not very many companies where you can truly help people and also get paid and have a significant amount of upside via equity. So I think the story is one. We do pay and we do give our employees, every single employee gets equity. But I think the real truth of it is my partner, David, he's an incredible recruiter. I mean, he spends a lot of time recruiting great people. I mean, it is a time consuming, there is no hacks. It just takes hard work and knowing how to source and talk to people and just be a ruthless recruiter. And I don't mean ruthless in like a negative way. I mean, like ruthless as just going after it all over and over. And he's the best I've ever seen. And, we mentioned earlier, how could I be a COO? Like I've learned so much from even just, if I learn nothing else, but how to recruit, that is the way. And I think typically it's a CEO doing it, and that's part of their job, but a COO would be great at it too, right? Especially for a co-founder to really get smart people and bring them in is one of the most undervalued, underspoken about skills that absolutely makes or break a company. You hear a lot of companies talk about they were good at raising money or they're good at telling stories or blah, blah, blah. Being a great recruiter is probably the most underrated and best thing you could do, especially early on.
Yeah. If you can't get that one, you'll never scale fast. You guys started this in the midst of COVID, like right at the beginning of COVID too.
Yeah. So we had bought an office in March and then everything shut down, or not bought an office, we rented an office space.
And so you really didn't start with an office, did you? You had to start remote.
We started remote. We were an essential service, so we got to use the office if we wanted. But now we have an office still. I think it's like 5 or 6 people go to it out of 300.
Really? So will you stay as a remote company, do you think?
Yeah, we have to. I mean, and that's really helped us. I mean, look, there's a lot of challenges with remote. I don't think anyone's cracked the culture code. We certainly haven't. It's really challenging. I mean, we have great culture, but it's not, there's nothing that replaces being with someone in real life.
Yeah.
But the pro is that we've been able to hire some incredible talent, and because of the talent, what we do, Medicare is somewhat niche, and so to be able to find the best talent, no matter where you are, has been a huge win for us. We would never have been able to do what we've done if we just had to hire in Los Angeles.
I can't even imagine getting ready to start a company, having the office leased, and then going, oh shit, now what? So did that throw a wrench into plans at all? Or were you just like adapt, move fast, like we'll figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, just you get stuck in the unknown. I think it's just a different type of unknown than an entrepreneur is used to, but it's just the same sort of thing. Things get thrown at you all the time. It's definitely challenging, but again, I also, again, we were essential workers, so we got to go back relatively quickly. So it also didn't affect us as much as it could have. I think it was just more about what's going on with the world that was probably a little bit harder, but everyone went through that. So I don't think our experience was any different.
Did you sell Ad Network, or what did you do with the ad network that you built up? You did.
Yeah, I sold it to my partner at the time, which I didn't. That's still a great business.
And Matic, you sold to another, like an acquiring company or PE, or who did you sell to?
Yeah, I sold a portion to some investors. Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to give us kind of the operational, even though you were CEO at Matic, what kind of can you give us an operational lens that went well and that you could have done better on the sale of that company? And then I want to start talking about, what it was like in raising money as well.
So on the sale of Matic, it was more of I think my partner and I at the time, we just wanted to go separate directions. And so that sale was more of a facilitation of that. It wasn't more of a traditional company sale. It was just part of my shares. So that I would say that my experience there is maybe not so helpful to the general public, to the general COO group. Again, it was more of let's figure out how to move forward on this.
Let's talk about the raising money then. In going through and raising money and working with so many different venture capital firms, what do you think are some of the lessons that you can impart from that journey? So
the first thing I would say is run a really solid process. And what does that mean? It means you'll get a lot of, if you're doing something right, you'll get a lot of inbound interest, and you'll get a lot of people trying to have meetings with you, and you'll take those meetings. But you should not take those meetings. You should run a process, and you should have a CRM or a spreadsheet and be very methodical about what you're sending to them, having different touch points. Okay, we had a pitch meeting. I sent them an investor memo. I sent them the data room. I sent them a case study, whatever it might be. And then that way you have those touch points. You can color code red, green, blue, or red, yellow, green. Where are these people? And just be really focused on that contacting and trying to lay up as many investors as possible in the same day, so you can also get your flow right and you have a great story. So I would say that having a great process is rule number one. Rule number two is having a great story. So investors are listening to your story. They either buy it or they don't. That's it. So a lot of people are like, well, do I have to have financials? Is the team slide at the beginning? Is it the end? None of that matters. It's just a story. And so your ability to tell that story, and your ability to tell a compelling story, and your ability to have an investor deduce themselves the right answer versus you telling them, is the difference between you winning and you losing. If I am as an investor can see this and say, I know how this wins without you telling me, you're going to get money. If you can't do that, then you don't have a compelling story. It's not simple enough. It's not clear enough. Super hard to do. Your first pitches are always going to suck. So at least that's for us. Our first pitches are always absolutely terrible. So it's just practice.
And I don't know, the list was like 6 or 7 companies that have invested. How many do you think you talked to?
It depends on which company. We had a fundraise at Matic that lasted 9-12 months because we didn't have this process, which was absolutely brutal. And it actually ended up working out well for us because we ended up getting more money than we had asked for originally. But still, it's not fun. It's very time consuming. In terms of Easy Health, it was a little bit easier. We probably spoke with 25 at the beginning, and we got 4 or 5, which was, we got a couple that 4 or 5 into the company, and we had a couple that were interested but couldn't meet the valuations we wanted. That was really lucky. I think a lot of that was because of A, we had great traction, and B, it's a lot easier when you're a known commodity. You know, I was talking to some of the same investors, or I was talking to other investors who I had history with, and they introduced me to somebody. So the second time around is always much easier for sure than the first time around.
Does that equate to the team that you're hiring as well? Like, to hiring some of the people that have been through this before, does that lend itself to working with some of these VCs too? Like,
just a story, right? So I think it's a story. Having someone who has a credible company, who's built something credible, makes it a lot easier for me as a VC to invest in you. So I think that, So if you have someone on your team who looks very investable, that's why people strike anything, right? I went to Yale, I went to Harvard, I went to wherever. People put that on there as a social proof. It really does work. Oh, you made it to Harvard, you must be competent.
Right.
It's the world to live in, right? So you built a very large fintech organization, you must know how to run a company. Or you must have done something right. You know, even if you sound like an idiot on the phone, and whatever, it's like that is a proof point that they cannot argue.
And I would argue that if they made it to Harvard, it's more than being competent. I know you're kidding, but
I said competent, not confident.
No, competent. Yeah, no, I know.
Oh yeah, competent. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're like the best of the best. But you're right. It is proof. It is great social proof. So you said something that was interesting when you were first starting your career that I thought was intriguing. Tom Peters used to call it MBWA. It was management by walking around, but you were just kind of learning by walking around. Do you still do that today as a COO, or when you're doing it when you were a CEO? Do you spend time just walking around and talking to people and show me what you're working on? Or do you need
everything in the world to do? I don't do it as much anymore because we have 5 people in the office. But at Matic, we had a large Columbus, Ohio office, and I would get so energized. I loved walking around and just walking into people's offices and just bothering them and saying, what's going on? I would pour, people were working late. I would drink wine with them and while doing stuff on the side, like I would just do whatever I could to be involved and just see, because selfishly, it just gives me energy. And I like seeing the machine work. I'll never forget the first time I realized that Matic was going somewhere. Was somebody walked past me. They said hi, and 3 people went to a conference room, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I had no idea what they were working on, and I was like, "This is great. I love that. I love that I don't have to know, and things are just getting done." That was a big deal for me at the time.
That's kind of the 100 to 300 employees zone, right?
Yeah. 50, or even. Man, that's so long ago. Yeah, 50 to 100. Yeah, something like that.
What are you doing right now with the transitions you're in now? Like at the 300 employee zone, politics is coming in, I'm sure.
I'm sure it is. I just haven't felt it yet. I'm sure it is. I just haven't felt it.
Do you think that your skills have to change and evolve now? Or are you working on your skills in any area?
Yes, 100% has to change. The thing that's interesting is even though we're scaling so quickly, well, the first thing is I'm just hiring as many smart people as I can to not do the things that if I'm doing it, it's probably not going to be done as well as someone who's their one job or that's part of their main responsibilities. So certainly moving to delegation or not trying to be a hero, quote unquote, and just doing the work has been hard and challenging, especially when you want something done in a certain way. So yeah, that learning how to trust somebody is very challenging. I learned that a lot in Matic, but it's still always hard to remember. And I think a lot of people don't understand what trust is. Like most people think trust is when you trust someone else to do something in the way you want it to be done. That's not trust. Trust is when you let someone do it in the way that they would do, even if you would do it differently. And you think your way is right and you let them do it their way. That is a really hard thing to do. Undervalued skill, something that I do well sometimes and not well other times. So I think that's probably the biggest thing in terms of skill set. And then just, managing a big team of people and getting culture and doing remote work and getting everyone to buy into the mission remotely is very challenging. So I'm still trying to figure out how to get good at that.
Where do you learn that stuff? From talking to others? Where do you go to learn, or how do you learn?
Yeah. So, like groups like yourselves, I used to do CEO groups. I've never done a CEO group, but that sounds great. There's other things. The internet Twitter is just an unbelievable resource. It's actually probably a better networking tool than LinkedIn as well. And just hearing from other entrepreneurs, and hearing their stories and their pain. I mean, everyone, the interesting thing about where we are in the US, especially in terms of how strong we are as an entrepreneurial country, is there's so many entrepreneurs, which means that there are people who have had the same problem you have had. And there's almost nothing new about the problem you've had. And so there's always someone who has done it. And so what I think that I could be better at too is just finding that try. And one thing that I've been really done a poor job in the past, and something I learned from David, is never try to solve the problem yourself. Always try to find someone who's already solved that problem and talk to them, and then talk to someone who solved it, and then triangulate. And that is something that is just so much quicker than saying, "Well, listen, I'm a smart guy. I can figure it out." Doesn't matter.
When I was 16, my dad said, you'll never be smart enough to figure out all these business problems on your own, but your R&D should stand for rip off and duplicate. And he said, millions of companies have figured out everything that you'll ever try to do. Try to find out who they are and what they've done, and just take the best ideas and run with them. They'll get you most of the way. And for me, that was always the shortcut, right? So,
and that, by the way, that relates to hiring great people who've done it before, because they'll know those shortcuts because they've already done it. They've already gone through the pain of learning the things that, will slow you down. And I think that's another difference between Matic and Easy Health. And one of the reasons why we move so much quicker is because we all had the benefit of having other startups where we learned from, and getting other people who had already built what we wanted to build, and saying, hey, let's not find smart people. Let's find smart people who've done it before.
How did you divide your roles between you and the CEO now? How did you guys decide who was going to do what?
Yeah, I think just we basically said very early that I'll be 0 to 1, and you be 1 to 10. And so you don't get in the weeds, and I won't, and I'll just follow your strategy. And we do we actually do that all the time? No, but that is how we've tried to divvy up the business. And I will say it's been pretty effective for the most part.
I want to talk about that go back to that MBWA again. You said it's kind of one of your favorite things to do. How do you wander around the office and talk to people when it's virtual? That's
the challenge, is that I haven't been able to do that as much. I mean, I do it with the 5 people who I work with today, but sometimes what you do is you just call someone, send them a Slack video request and see if they pick up. It's just not the same, honestly, because people can decline. People might be in a meeting. You can see when people are busy, so you don't bother them. So it's just I haven't figured out a good way to do that, and it's tough because it's not. That's really my most fun thing to do.
Well, I think so. It's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking about how would I do it, and then you just mentioned it earlier. Our job isn't to figure out how to do it; it's to find the people that are doing it. I think you and I need to find the people that are doing it, because somebody out there, or more than one, are doing it in a good way. Because I think we need to find that, because that was a huge thing for me as well. And I think it's a big opportunity when companies can crack that code, that's going to be big for them. All right, I want to go back to the 22-year-old Aaron graduating from college, getting ready to start off on your career. What advice would you give the 21, 22-year-old that maybe you know it to be true today, but you wish you'd known back then?
Read more, listen more, talk less. And also I would say, I got to where I was, I think just like comedians, typically they always say, oh, there's some like darkness to them. I don't think I have that darkness, but I do think there's like a chip on my shoulder that I have. And so that chip is both good and bad. And so I would say just to not take it a little easy on myself. Now it's easy for me to say that now, but at the time it was, that pain drove me. So I would try to see if I could get to the same place without the pain being the engine or the fuel, more of just like a place of strength and like love versus like just, anxiety. Aaron Schiff, the COO, co-founder of Easy Health. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Second in Command podcast. Really appreciate the show today. Thanks, Cameron. Thanks for having me.
My driver has been sort of being that savior, having that savior complex, and really helping people who need the help, that underdog. I want to go in as soon as I hear that they're not doing well. And sometimes that's not the right thing to do when it comes to your team. Sometimes they need to figure things out. Being there and doing everything for them is not necessarily the best solution.